In episode 1 of this series, we talked about a structure that I am using to practice the Gregson Trumpet Concerto, or the gold method piece of this puzzle. In episode 2, we talked about how I use that structure to practice deliberately to make sure I'm getting the most out of my practice. In this video, I'm going to share some recordings with you that I made this past week, and I want to talk about how I use those recordings to learn what I need to focus on so that I can keep improving. Let's dive in. To go over these recordings, what I think would be interesting to do is to revisit the section for movement 1 from rehearsal 13 to rehearsal 15 that I did in the previous episode, and then to track how I made improvement on that section in the days after that. Okay, so now that we have that repetition as a baseline, we're gonna open up program 1, week 1, day 3. And you can see here we have this section, movement 1, 13 to 15 at 64 beats per minute. Let's check it out. Okay, so there are still problems that exist within this repetition, but it's somewhat improved from the previous practice session. So we'll consider that a win. Let's check out what I wrote in my notebook here. I wrote E in first measure, and then D, G sharp, F sharp. I think that just means I missed those notes. Go back and check them out. And then measure before 14, intonation. So obviously I heard something there that I wanted to check. And then blow through to the high C. So I think I got the high C with where the trill was, where I think I realized it's not necessarily the most musical way to go about doing it. I played it, but I want to make sure the motion goes through it. So let's check out the second repetition to see what happened there. So that repetition was definitely better overall. And when I'm listening back to these, one way I try to figure out if it's, quote, good enough is to ask, if I played it like this, but it was at performance tempo, would I be happy? In this case, the answer would be yes, I would be happy if I played it at tempo like that. So then I think to myself, well, now that I've got it, let's see if I can do it again. So there were a couple of misses in that third and final repetition for this day, but overall, I feel like it's a pretty strong repetition still. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna close this up. We're gonna come over here to day 5, and we're gonna find the same exact section, movement 1, 13 to 15, and we're gonna see how much of what I have learned can I recall and replicate 2 days after I did the previous session. Okay, so some misses still here and there, but overall the general gist of what I'm trying to do I think is pretty good. So what I wrote here on this particular repetition was slur the whole thing again, there are too many mistakes, then legato tongue after the slur. So I basically used the same approach to fix these problems that I used back in episode 2. I'm gonna slur the entire thing to get the center of all of the notes, and then I'm gonna legato tongue it to make sure I understand where to aim. So I did that in between the repetitions, and then I did repetition number 2, and we're gonna see, did that help? Okay, so I thought it was improved over the previous repetition, so that's a positive. Still not as perfect as I would like it to be. We're searching for getting closer and closer to perfection with this process. So in my journal, after that repetition, I just wrote, better second time, clean up end. So I think I just slurred it a few times and just kind of reminded myself, okay, this is where those notes are, where am I aiming? And then we did the third repetition, and this would finish out this day. So I think we got it back up to a high level of performance that I would be satisfied with if it was at performance tempo. So I'm just gonna, keep my notes and refer back to them and hope that in a couple of days when I come back to it at a little bit faster tempos, I'm gonna be able to recreate this level of performance. And over time, I just wanna make this kind of thing as consistent as I can. You may have noticed that when I have put the music on the screen in this video that I've been putting little red circles or underlining things in red throughout, and you may have figured out that this is me identifying the mistakes that I would like to fix within the recordings that I'm making. The reason mistakes are important in our practice is because mistakes will point the way to the things we need to focus on or the things that need to be fixed in our playing. If you'll notice when you listen to my recordings, the general majority of it is at a high level. I am making some mistakes, but the mistakes are a very small percentage of the overall presentation. When I was younger, I hated making mistakes because I just thought it meant I was never going to be good enough. But now I try to get the beginning of my practice to be as high quality as I can, and then I'm actively searching out for as many mistakes that I can fix as possible so that I can actually figure out some solutions to them and get better. What I want to do now is share a couple of recordings where things didn't go according to plan right away, but I was able to course correct over the next couple of repetitions so that you can hear that even if things don't go exactly the way you want them to right away, that's why we practice. That's why we're doing this, so that we can improve. In my journal on the 5th, when I did day 3 of this program, I wrote for the section that is a couple of bars before 59 to 60 in the third movement, I wrote, terrible first rep. Focus. Let's see what that was all about. Seems okay so far. So right there is what I was talking about. I just played the wrong rhythm, and it's because I wasn't focused on what I was doing. I wasn't thinking. It's pretty easy to have this happen when your repetitions are kind of constant like this. It's easy to lose focus. So let's see how I did on the next repetition, because all I wrote in my journal was focus. So I'm assuming that the solution to this is not that I don't know it and that I can't play it, but I just need to get my brain engaged on what I'm doing. So that was better, for sure. Let's check that same exact part of the section on the third rep for this day. So overall, even though I had a pretty terrible first rep where it didn't go the way I wanted it to, I got 2 out of the 3 repetitions at exactly the quality I wanted. To me, practicing isn't just spending time in the practice room, assuming that if you're doing something, you're getting better, but rather you're setting up a system that allows you to see what you can remember about previous practice sessions and then address those things that you don't remember and try to continue to imprint the solutions you know that work, or continue to search for solutions that you haven't yet found. If you'll notice, when I'm practicing from one day to the next, I still might make some same mistakes a couple days later, but as the practice session goes on, I'm fixing those mistakes, and my hope is that over time I'll remember the first time how to fix those mistakes, which is what performance is. It's remembering all the things you need to do to create a successful outcome all at once. The final section I want to share in this video is the section that I did on day 2, which is in the first movement from rehearsal 15 to rehearsal 18. This is a bit of a longer section, but I wrote a whole bunch of stuff in my journal, so I wanted to cover it. I wanted to cover what I wrote and why I wrote it to give a big picture, because this is a pretty challenging section. So obviously in that whole section, the beginning part of it is not a problem necessarily. There are some things to fix, but the bulk of it comes in the second half of the section. What I wrote in my journal was check 17, triple tongue, going to isolate 17 to 18 slowly and slurred, and then stay high at high C. So what that means is to check 17 to figure out what's the solution, because I didn't get it right, and then also check the triple tonguing section, the triple tonguing part up to the high C. And then my solution, the way I was gonna go about doing it, was to isolate those measures and kind of figure it out slowly and slurred. And then I also figured out stay high at the high C. What I noticed was when I got around there in the triple tonguing, I was falling off of those notes because I was kind of relaxing. So I needed to keep the energy high as if I was still playing high notes and not relax. So let's check out how that slow and slurred work helped me on the second repetition of this section. I'm gonna skip ahead to the part where I made mistakes and I'm trying to fix. All right, so better than the first rep, but still not where we want it to be. In my journal, all I wrote was focus is the solution. I find myself writing this a lot in my journals, that focus is the answer. Just being engaged with what I'm doing and not letting my mind wander. Not assuming that, oh, I've got this, but rather I've got this if I'm engaged. So I'm pretty sure I just dove right into the third repetition with a recommitment to being focused. Let's hear how that went. So definitely improved. I'm satisfied with that outcome. That is good enough work for me for that day. You put it away and then you pick it up a couple of days later to see if you can recreate it then. Still working on it. But we're making progress. It's hard to see, but this whole mound was not here before.